in this video, we're going to talk about subroutines or sub-procedures, and we're going to talk about functions. So you've probably have already noticed this, that we have functions that when you click on like a, we have a button so that whenever you, we have functions so that whenever you click on a button, it'll execute some code for you. And so down here in figure 6.1, we have a event procedures name. This is a sub procedure, button calc click. And then off to the side here, we have handles, button calc click, where button calc is a button named button calc, and it handles this event called click. So we've already been using sub procedures a little bit up to this time without really spending a lot of time talking about them. So this topic that we're going to be discussing today is there are some new aspects, but there are some aspects that you probably are already know from just the experience of working on assignments for the last so many weeks. Procedure names are usually entered using Pascal case, meaning that you capitalize the first letter in the name and the first letter of each word in the name. So for example, clear pay, you would do that because C is uppercase because it's the first letter of clear, and P in pay, and so that allows us to be able to see that we're able to clearly be able to figure out how to say the procedure name by the way that it's capitalized to separate out the words. So moving along here, you can have sub procedures that are independent of events. This is a good practice to follow and is encouraged. And that's probably not strict enough. Just saying that it's encouraged. It's something that you should do. And if you're going to write good code, you'll definitely use sub procedures in Visual Studio, Visual Basic. What this allows us to be able to do by writing sub procedures, it allows us to avoid duplicating code. So instead of copying and pasting code in several different places, you're able just to call the subroutine when you need it. Expanding on that is whenever you find an error or you need to make modifications, you only go to one place to make that modification, which is where you define the sub procedure. It makes procedures easier to code and understand by breaking up a problem into smaller pieces and into pieces that are easier to chew and understand. You're able to a smaller piece of code is easier to understand. Let's just put it that way. And it's also easier to get your mind around what you're trying to do with that. Also, it allows more than one programmer to code the application. So you could actually break the problem into several smaller pieces, and each member of the team could focus on individual parts, and then you put it together at the end. So the syntax of a sub procedure, it's very similar to what we've already seen before, to where you would write private sub, the procedure name, you have a parameter list or list of arguments, and then notice out here we don't have the handles blah 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 because we're not handling a certain event. Then we have one or more statements, a visual basic statements, and then we write the word end sub to end the subroutine. When you want to call that subroutine, you just use the procedure name that you have whenever you define the function along with the argument list. Okay, so here's an example where we're going to fill a list box. First thing we do, and the list box is named list numbers. We're going to first clear list numbers just in case if it contains elements, and then we're going to use a for loop to add the elements 1 to 10 into list numbers, and then we're going to end the subroutine. Then to call the fill list box sub procedure, you just put the name with a opening and closing parentheses as we have up here, no arguments in the list. That's what it'll be down here. Another example where we're going to list a bunch of salaries, and we will specify the upper limit with this variable called int end. And so here we have a list box called salaries. We're going to clear that, and then we go from 45,000 up to int end, whatever we've decided that's going to be, by steps of 5,000. And here we add in the elements. And then down here, we're actually calling that procedure, one with a variable that's defined called max salary. And then here we've hard-coded a value of 65,000 that works as well. Then further down, we've got another sub procedure called calcnet, and we're going to take 3 different variables, 2 variables that are the money in and the money out, and then the difference, which is the value that is the difference between the two. Now, example 3, I really feel is not a good example. This would be better coded as a function, which I'll show you in a minute. Since we're wanting to return a value from calcnet, which is the difference between money in and money out, this would be better to be coded as a function. So even though some people may feel that this is okay, I personally don't feel that it's okay and that it would be better as a function. So let's look at this application here. Here we create a sub procedure called display grade 101. And we're going to display the grade for history 101 is what the comment says. And we have a variable called int points. And we're going to take a value from a box, input box, and we're going to parse that and put the integer value into this points variable. And then we check to see if the grade is greater than 90, greater than or equal 90. If so, the label grade text box is going to equal A. If it's greater than or equal to 80, we're going to put the value of B there, C, and so on. Here's another one for list grade 201, and this is mostly going to be a pass and fail. So we're at the beginning, we're roughly doing the same thing. We're taking the text, converting it to an integer, and then if it's greater than or equal to 70, we're going to put P there, which represents a pass. F represents a fail. So here in our display click button, when this procedure is called, it'll check to see if a history 101 checkbox is selected. If it is, it'll use the logic and display grade 101 to give a value between A and an F. And if history 101 is not checked, then it knows to use the pass and fail logic instead. So here you can see this. Here's the total points, the text box. person will put in the grade, enter in, click on 101 or 201, and then click display, and it'll display the letter grade. Passing information to a procedure. There's two different ways of doing it. One is called pass by value, and the other is called pass by reference. If you want to change a variable's value, you use pass by reference. Pass by value just passes the value of the variable and won't update the variable's contents in the procedure. That's the way I default to doing things. The reason why is because usually you're not going to be updating values in your functions. And so by default, that's what you want to do. And then pass by reference is a special case that you do whenever you want to update or change a value in a variable. So passing variables by value. Let's look at an example of that. Oops, I skipped past a bunch of this. Display weekly. To pass a variable by value, we type by val as a keyword before the name of the variable that we want to pass. And then we can use int weekly in our function here or in our procedure. And then we update other variables based on certain calculations here, which we, the pay, if we're wanting to display the weekly salary, we take what the salary is divided by 52, and that gives us the pay for the week. If we're displaying the pay by month, we'll assume that there's 24 pay periods. And so we'll take some value, divide it by 24, and display that amount. So here, whenever a button is pressed, we can then parse a salary value, put it into this salary integer variable, and then we can check to see if the person's going to be paid weekly or twice a month, and then we can display how much they get paid based on that. So if somebody gets paid $42,500 a year, if they're paid weekly, that'll be $817.31 each week. Notice down here that the by val indicates that the argument is passed by value. The int weekly is the parameter. And so whenever we want to call it, we would say display weekly, and the variable we want to pass into the display weekly procedure. Same thing down here. We use the exact same logic there by passing this other variable int twice per month. Passing values by reference. Look at an example. Here we have a couple of variable of count we have this subroutine called count discount. Our first couple variables we're passing in by value, int num, and the before discount, and then the return value is a double. That is the discount, the amount after the discount. Since we're only returning one value here, since we're only interested in this procedure actually would be best coded as a function, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. If you have several variables that you're going to be calculating and you need to return all those variables, then writing it similar to this is fine. But if you've only got a single value that you're interested in calculating, like what we have here, double disk is the only variable here that we're updating. We might as well just return this as a function. So this really isn't the best example, even though it does show how it works. I personally would consider this bad programming practice, even though the book seems to encourage it. So rounding numbers, one thing you've got to be concerned about with rounding numbers, especially whenever you're dealing with money, is whenever you round, you could be off by a little bit. This says it's off by a penny. If you look at this, you're doing some multiplication here. You get, like for these discounts and for the subtotal and stuff, you get this to 3 decimal places, 21.875. Since we don't have anything past, cents, pennies, we've got to round this up or down, and it gets rounded to 21.88. And the total due here gets rounded to 415.63, $415.63. So we've got to be a little bit concerned about this. So what you want to do is you want to do your rounding as late as possible. And that's kind of what that shows here is you've got a certain amount, 437. Here you're doing a calculation on it. And so whenever you do this, 21.875, go ahead and do your arithmetic on the numbers before you do any kind of rounding, and then do the rounding at the very end. Because if you do that, then you're only going to be off by about a penny, where if you do the arithmetic, if you do a rounding for every calculation, it'll compound and get bigger and bigger over time. So here's an example where it's calculating a subtotal, and it's also calculating a discount and doing the arithmetic. What I'd suggest that you do is do the arithmetic first and then do the rounding. If you are putting certain values into text fields, like what's shown down here, you could always do that rounding at the very end, right before you display these values here. Function procedures. Functions allow you to be able to return a data type, return a value. Procedures do not allow you to do that. So let's look at an example down here. We have a function, we give it a procedure name that's usually the exact same syntax as what we used before, the camel case stuff. Then we have a parameter list, and then to specify the type will return, you say it as a data type. Then you have your statements, and then anywhere in the statements, including at the end, you could have a return and then some value. The expression here needs to match the data type that you've specified up here as the as data type. Best way to explain this is look at a couple examples. Here we have a function called get new pay. We're passing by value and old value, and we want to increase the pay by 2%. So we take the old value, multiply it by 1.02. That's the new value, and we return that new value. This is going to end up being a double. New double is a double here whenever we describe or created the function, or created the variable here, double new as double. Notice that we're returning double new, and double new is a double as shown here, and is expected by the function. In the second example, get new pay, it's almost exactly like the old one, except instead of creating a new variable, we just do the calculation and return that value. So we don't necessarily need to create a variable called double new. We could just do the arithmetic in the return, and Visual BASIC knows how to do that and it'll return the value. So here's how we would call a function. We just give it the name get new pay, pass it a variable, and then use another variable to set that function equal to. So you say double new pay is equal to the function and then any variables that it has. You could also use get new pay itself in arithmetic like what we have here, where we say double new pay is equal to the function times 40. And you could also use it to help display the return value in a new label, for example, like what we see here in example 3. So the notice before, whenever we were talking about the double discount, here we see it as a function, get discount. We're passing in a number, and we look at the value before the discount. And so we check here, just int num. If int num is greater than or equal to 10, we give a 10% discount. If int num is greater than or equal to 5, we give it a 5% discount. And if it's not any of those, the discount is 0, and then we return double disc. And so this is a better way to write the function. That way you don't have to have a by ref, nothing like that. It's a cleaner way of writing the code. All right, well, that's it for this lecture. Feel free to watch it again if you need to. One of the things you might want to do is compare. We come back down here to this get discount, look at the procedure equivalent of this and compare the difference between the procedure and the function version of this. And I think you will agree that this is probably a cleaner way of doing it. It's fewer lines of code, and you don't have to worry about having the by ref. You can just do the by vals here. You don't have to worry about passing in the extra functions. You got nothing like that you have to worry about. Even though in the function you do have to declare an extra variable, I think this is cleaner in the long run, just from the experience I've had and then talking to other people. So that's a good little exercise for you to look at. So I'll see you next time.